Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you back for another Datalere, formerly Eckerson Group webinar. The topic today is a great one: strengthen your core data governance for success with agentic AI. Obviously, that's all in the buzz these days. And we're eager to dive into it with my former colleague, Kevin Petrie. So a little bit about Datalere, my new company. Actually, I joined Datalere. It's basically an architecture and engineering firm that builds data solutions and has been doing it for a long time. And then obviously with the addition of Eckerson Group, we provide strategy, governance, self-service, and operating model services on top of that, along with a lot of content like what you're seeing here today. Some of our recent consulting clients, just to show that we do actually consult and help people move the dial with data analytics in their organizations. And should have mentioned, my name is Wayne Eckerson. I am now a strategic consultant at Datalere. And with me today, as I said, is Kevin Petrie, VP of Research at BARC. Kevin and I worked together for many years at Eckerson Group, where he led our research division. So Kevin's glad to have you on board today.
Wayne, great to reconnect. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Let's get on with the session. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. It's all yours, Kevin.
All right. Thank you, Wayne. Great opportunity, great topic, and great time for this topic. Our theme is strengthening your core data governance for success with agentic AI. As we know, agentic AI has captured the corporate imagination. The idea of agents was really not mainstream a year and a half ago. And now a third of companies, or potentially more, say they're in production with agents. So that's an incredible accelerated adoption pace. In a lot of cases, those agents are commercial features of other commercial products, but there is pretty frenzied adoption. There's also growing concern, I think rightful, sober assessment of the risks associated with AI and agents. And so what I'm going to do today is talk about the step-by-step set of methods to address those concerns. It starts with data fundamentals and data governance. So, Wayne, we can go to the next slide here. The numbers that we have here at BARC, we do a lot of survey work, and we had some surveys come out. A survey come out earlier this year with my colleague Sean Rogers. Even as organizations embrace AI, too few trust their model inputs and outputs. And so that's actually a report that I did with another colleague, Tim Grosser. We found that while the vast majority of organizations are pretty comfortable with their BI dashboards and reports because they've had them for a while, because they have refined methods of handling that largely structured data, there is concern about AI ML models. And so about a third of companies don't trust the inputs, and a little north of 40% don't trust the outputs of these AI ML models. Now that includes traditional, if you will, machine learning. It also includes Gen AI language models. So there's work to do. We're also finding that too many organizations, too many AI adopters struggle with data governance related obstacles. Familiar suspects, data quality and lineage, privacy and regulatory concerns, data access. These are all major obstacles when it comes to managing and delivering data to support artificial intelligence models, applications, and of course, agentic applications. There's also a lack of AI skills, and that's a theme that applies here quite a bit as well. A lot of organizations across functions don't have the necessary mindset, the necessary literacy, or willingness and skills to adopt AI and to use it creatively, use it effectively and safely within the organization. That's true of data teams as well, and I think there needs to be higher level of AI awareness among data and governance teams.
So Kevin, just to interject here for a second,
Yeah.
that's all true, but it looks like there's some good news baked into these numbers too, that a third aren't really trusting the inputs or the outputs, but that means two-thirds are. So that's pretty encouraging, I would say, early on in this trajectory of this technology.
I think it is. I think that it's probably heavily swayed, and we don't have the crust cut on this, towards the, if you will, the more traditional machine learning, where ML models have been available through public libraries for some time now, and organizations can feed those, in a lot of cases, tabular data that they have a better handle on validating and governing, observing, and so forth. So yes, there is some good news on that front. There's a lot to of progress to make, but there is a good chunk of companies that feel like they're very much headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I would say on the whole, with Gen AI, the risk factor is a lot higher than the ML side of things. Would you agree?
Very much. Gen AI feeds on unstructured data, in large part, not completely, but in large part. And so documents and images are harder to validate. It involves subjectivity, it involves labeling, classification, sentiment analysis, a lot of tricky subjective measures. And so that introduces new governance concerns, new uncertainty, and new risk that I'll be talking about more, in fact, as we go through this.
Yeah, that's definitely true. All right, let's keep moving on. I just want to remind folks that if you have a question or a comment, we love bringing you into the conversation. Just
Yes.
type that into the Q&A tab at the bottom.
Okay. So another finding that we have from the survey I mentioned that came out earlier this year, AI adopters express confidence. This particular number here, 78% of data executives say responsible safeguards and guardrails for governing AI are in place today. That was from Randy Bean's annual survey of chief data officers and other data leaders. And I think that shows rising appreciation of the need for governance when it comes to artificial intelligence. That's critical. That's good news. But what we're finding in our survey is that only 21% of companies, of adopters, have what we would call a governed strategic AI program that extends across the enterprise. And so to do that, you need these seven things. An enterprise architecture, you need to address that. AI program standards and policies, project governance oversight, legal considerations. You need an AI leader among the executive ranks. You need to address data access and use policies and security standards and compliance. If you've done these seven things and you're pretty mature in them, then we would deem you an AI leader in terms of adoption. Those are the ones that are moving faster, they're taking careful risks, and they're achieving better results. They're also adopting agents faster than their peers. And the bad news is 79% of companies are not doing this. So I would view the juxtaposition of these two numbers as showing that there is some overconfidence among AI adopters when it comes to understanding and addressing the governance risks of AI overall.
Would it be safe to say, like in the advent of any new technology, that's being deployed largely in pockets? And for each individual pocket of agentic AI development, maybe they do have a good handle on things, but scaling to the enterprise, which is what I think your list of seven things kind of focuses on, that's a whole nother can of worms, right? It's much harder to scale, an initiative that's deployed in one silo of the organization and scale it up enterprise wide. That be a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think that there are large organizations that are building fast, creative teams that can safely devise some pretty powerful ways to improve efficiency, improve productivity by using AI to take friction out of established processes and do that and deliver results with maybe limited production or experiments on a departmental basis. Then scaling that to more of an enterprise-wide deployment is harder, and that's where you need this cross-functional AI program to be in place to make sure that all the right stakeholders are trained and involved, to make sure that you're addressing risks, and to make sure that you can budget for this stuff because inference costs are not trivial. They've
Yeah.
come down a lot, but they're not trivial, and in a sense, that's the next challenge when it relates to FinOps.
A couple questions have come in, Kevin.
Good.
Lisa asks on the topic of data lineage for Gen AI projects, what tools help with this? I have only seen the integration of Ohalo, Data X-ray, don't know that tool, and Calibra
Oh,
provide data
interesting.
lineage showing which documents are being used in the model. Are you aware of other tools?
I have heard of Ohalo, and I've actually think I've been speaking with some of the founders there. That's a good list. I think it depends on how extensive the lineage needs to be. The short answer is no, I don't know of other specific tools, but there are a lot of ways in which existing data lineage tools can contribute to the visibility that models need. So what I envision happening is that data observability companies across the board are going to need to expose their metadata to the ML platforms. And so the Dataiku and ML Flow, which is baked into a lot of what Databricks is doing, are two examples of ML platforms that would want to take the lineage views and the lineage metadata that's coming from the observability tools.
Now, Kevin, I know you studied RAG, retrieval
Yeah.
augmented generation. Is that what it stands for? Automated.
Yes. Yeah.
Doesn't that play in here? I mean, obviously, when you set that architecture up and you deploy it for a specific use case, you know exactly what you're running it against, right?
Ideally, yes. Yeah, I think that RAG is has emerged as the standard way to feed proprietary data, structured, unstructured, and semi-structured, into prompts in order to increase the likelihood that a Gen AI model will get an answer that's on target and correct and safe. And RAG oftentimes is pulling vectorized content embeddings from a vector database that represent their sort of mathematic representations of source documents or images and so forth. There's metadata associated with that. And if you're pulling up RAG, you should be able to, if you're using RAG to search, say, a product document, you should be able to go straight to the source document and provide the necessary lineage so that the end user, the data engineer, everyone else associated can understand the source document that and that a passage, a GenAI output is based on.
Yeah, I know Carlos Bassi, who runs Datalere. He was showing me a new Agentic AI application he was building in Snowflake Cortex, and in there you specify exactly what the data sources are that you want to run those agents against and the tools that they might use to go access information or do other sorts of things. But I think Lisa might be looking for kind of an after the fact, you know, summary like you would have in a catalog of what sources are being used for specific applications. And in that case, I would think that Calibra and all the other data catalog vendors would be moving in that direction.
Very much. And there are also RAG as a service companies. Custom GPT is one targeting more mid-sized enterprises. Another one is Vectara. And so these are companies that are automating a lot of that RAG workflow for you.
Mm.
And they will be exposing metadata as well. So in my view, the catalog of the future really has to capture all that stuff along with the data assets and along with the models and the agents. That's really the super catalog of the future. And a lot of those catalog companies are moving in that direction through partnerships and so forth.
Yeah, and what's interesting about catalogs or metadata in general is that you need at least according to Carlos, you need a semantic layer to run your models effectively, which tells the models everything that they need to know about accessing the data and joining the tables and fields and things like that.
Yes.
And yeah, so to create that semantic layer, it's basically all metadata. So you would think that they would be importing from catalogs where a lot of the metadata is. So I think that kind of integration is happening as we talk as well.
Yeah. And there are also companies like unstructured.io, which specialize in unstructured data. And so they help prepare data in place and provide views of it so that organizations can expose that to RAG workflows and by extension Gen AI models. And they're starting to catalog a lot of that metadata as well.
Yeah. So again, metadata is going to be a secret ingredient for Gen AI, but managing
Yes.
metadata it's going to be a problem. We'll have all these semantic layers and catalogs and metadata repositories, and integrating those, I think, is going to be a major challenge going forward. But let me
Yeah,
go
I
to
think
the
so.
second. Let me go to the second question from Tom. He said, "Are you going to reference the recent MIT report, which I heard about on a podcast
Yeah.
on low adoption and success rate of Gen AI and maybe Agentic?" The number quoted, I think, was 12% success. Now, that's not what, well, I didn't hear about that adoption rate. I heard more that, that there was another factor that they weren't getting the productivity gains yet from the usage of Gen AI. That's what I heard, but I think it's probably the same report.
Yeah, so MIT has come out with some interesting research in this regard. The report that they have found a 95% failure rate for Gen AI pilots among adopters. And that created concern and buzz in the blogosphere and so forth about whether AI is overhyped and so forth. I think this is healthy maturation. Once again, there are always failed experience, there always will be, but it's also a signal that it takes time to figure out how to apply these powerful models to enterprise business processes. If we look at prior innovations, the PC boom, the internet wave, before that, the internal combustion engine, it always takes a long time to figure out how to apply a powerful new disruptive technology to established ways of doing things. And one of the challenges that features in the MIT study and other places is people slow rolling technology because they don't know how to use it or they fear it for job losses. That's showing up in some of the survey work that we see. So we'll get there, but governance risks do need careful attention and are not a small part of the reason that some of the AI projects are not delivering the results organizations expected.
Yeah, and I think agentic AI also exposes some cracks in people's data foundation. As Carlos was telling me when he
Very much.
showed me the demo, that if you don't have a good handle on your data, I think this is kind of the whole gist of your presentation, right? You're not going to get
Yeah.
good results. And he's like, well, yeah, you need a semantic layer, and hopefully it can pull from a data catalog. 'Cause if you don't have that, you're in trouble. And if you haven't modeled your data for specific use cases that you're building agentic AI for, well, then it's going to take a lot. It's going to be a lot harder for the agentic AI to deliver good results fast and, efficiently. So, modeling your data, which is something a lot of organizations sometimes and younger developers have whizzed by in their rush to code things right from source data. I think we're relearning that need and that technique and the importance of modeling again. So,
It's funny how technology rhymes and takes us in cycles.
yeah,
Really no better time to double down on the fundamentals.
yeah. All right, let's keep moving on here.
Okay. Primary data risks. The intention here is to show that familiar challenges are looming large as organizations look at AI and advanced analytics. You can have outdated or inconsistent data that leads to bad decisions, suboptimal decisions. It can also lead to Gen AI models hallucinating. Privacy breaches remain a considerable risk. The California Consumer Privacy Act, other state legislation, and then in Europe, the GDPR has, I think, forced organizations to get a lot better at addressing this concern, but it remains. And if you look at MCP, Model Context Protocol, and the ease with which it can connect agents to all kinds of source data within SaaS applications, there is, I think, newfound need for vigilance when it comes to privacy. Bias, of course, is a problem and remains a problem. And that can become even more of a problem as you look at agents that start to make autonomous or even semi-autonomous decisions without human oversight. Intellectual property exposure is a concern, and I think that as with all these issues, the the gorillas, the open AIs, and others are moving so fast. They're not they're not waiting for full legal approval of what they do, and the governance burden very much rests on the adopter. adopters need to think very carefully about how they're going to protect their intellectual property. And of course, there's non-compliance. There's a need to demonstrate compliance with various sector-specific or geographic-specific regulations.
One
So these are all,
subset of risk related to hallucination is replicability. And that's a real tough one for corporations. And that's when you can't get consistent answer to the same question. And especially if you're exposing agentic AI to your customers, you need to give them you need to give them the same answer to the same question every single time, or else you're
yeah,
going to be in a wild, wild west. It's going to get the best of you, I think. And that replicability leads directly back to the data. You may not have enough data or the right data or the targeted data to deliver that replicable answers.
that's a great point. That's a really good point that it's a dimension I hadn't considered, but you're exactly right. We do recommend with RAG workflows that organizations look at multifaceted architectural approaches. So the most traditional or the most popular form of RAG is to do semantic searches of vectorized content. So basically search documents and images or video to bring up language that will vary. But you can also have relational RAG, which is SQL querying tables. And that's where you get your facts that should never change.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important way to inject consistent, replicable facts. If you're conversing with a customer, you never want to change your mind about the size of their last transaction.
Sure.
And so SQL is a good way to make sure you have that consistency.
Right.
Graph ontologies, GraphRag can provide additional consistency when thinking about how different business entities interrelate to one another.
Yeah. Good. Just want to remind the audience, if you have more questions or comments, please insert them into the Q&A tab at the bottom. Let's move on, Kevin.
All right, so here we're taking the temperature on data governance. We find that organizations, as I mentioned before, we're dividing our survey responses into the 21%, the leaders that are doing the right things. They have that 7 prongs to their enterprise-wide governed AI program. And then the followers is everyone else. And we find that leaders, generally speaking, are doing a pretty good job. Most of them have implemented and or optimized controls for data quality, IP protection, creating and enforcing policies, access control, compliance, and privacy. That's good stuff, but lineage and data bias are problems that remain insufficiently addressed both by leaders and followers. And you can see that the followers in general have a lot of work to do. So as we know, data governance is a work in progress, and too many AI adopters are struggling with fundamental controls. Even the leaders are lagging in lineage and bias. And I think that this is an important factor for us to consider as we get ready for AI. It's really important to get this stuff in order first. I
Yeah.
think the good news is that more executives, while they're overconfident, have a rising appreciation of the risks of AI and of agentic AI. The Gemini survey recently said that most executives would not trust an agent to send an email on their behalf. And in fact, most now believe that the risks of agents outweigh the benefits. That's
Hmm.
tricky. So it's a healthy maturation and an appreciation of the risk. And I think what that means is that more dollars can be available to data teams to improve in these areas of data governance controls. Data quality, it's a good starting point. So Wayne, this would probably look familiar. This was the data observability lifecycle that I built when I was with Eckerson Group, and we hosted the CDO tech event related to data observability, looking at data quality and data pipeline performance. So the idea here is that there's really a life cycle to addressing data quality in which you detect patterns, breaks in patterns, outlier values, problems. Then you assess the nature of the problem, the impact of the problem, and resolve that. And so I won't go into great detail on each of these, but I think the key point is that this is a really important area to get right. We're finding that about 2/3 of companies say they have a data quality observability program in place. And however, as we saw before, about a third of companies don't trust the data that they're delivering to their AI ML models. So there's room for improvement among a significant chunk of AI adopters. This particular life cycle, I think, could be adapted with different tools, different people to address, or I should say, different peers within an organization to address AI ML models and to address agents. All of them have a life cycle: data, models, and agentic applications. All right. So to mitigate these risks, data teams need to learn some new tools and techniques. Most importantly, they need to collaborate and teach and learn from data science teams. And so we've been working carefully with practitioners to understand how well data teams, data science teams, and developers can speak the same language, can share platforms and tools, and can help one another, because ultimately there is the need for that cross-functional collaboration. To support those other teams, data teams need to do a few things. With data integration, they understand pretty well how to validate table values and how to ensure consistency and so forth with structured data. We haven't mastered it, but we're pretty good at it. Now the trick is to capture the semantic meaning of unstructured objects. If you have a PDF document, you need to classify it as highly trustworthy, moderately trustworthy. You need to classify the topic. You need to append other types of metadata and labels to gauge what it relates to and how to use it. And so that labeling process becomes an important way to guide AI ML models as they consume it. So that's an important skill for data teams to learn. They also need to apply their data quality observability program to ensure clean features and inputs to train machine learning models, and also to ensure that those unstructured objects convey meaning accurately. I think master data is potentially an unsung future hero of AI initiatives, because it can really help AI models standardize on data inputs. If you have a customer service chatbot or a supply chain tool, you want to make real sure that you're using consistent terminology and you're talking about exactly the right product, exactly the right customer, component, or factory. And I think master data can be an excellent way to feed the right guidance into Gen AI models, for example, through prompt libraries. Or you could even have a master data registry that is a source for a RAG workflow. It's early days on that, but in my view, the mature way to apply AI will involve a healthy dose of master data. And catalogs, organizations need to take advantage of advanced catalogs that will organize and curate metadata for new data sources, those unstructured objects I mentioned, for model features, models, and agents. And stay tuned on that front. Informatica, there are a number of companies that are vendors that are starting to address AI ML models and unstructured objects within catalogs. As I mentioned before, unstructured.io is working on a catalog as well to capture all its metadata related to unstructured text and so forth. And then on the governance side, it's important to define and enforce new policies that can address AI risks, hallucinations, and so forth. And I'm actually finishing up some research on that front as we speak, related to building policies, rules, and standards to address not just data governance risks, but the new domains of models and agents.
Yeah, well, with regard to master data catalogs and the labeling of data, you mentioned, I think the sub-theme for this presentation is the importance of metadata to the smooth functioning and accuracy of these Gen AI models. And that's why a lot of people are saying that they're looking for a universal semantic layer. Some people are turning to knowledge graphs and graph databases as a great way to train models and give them the information they need to deliver accurate responses.
Yes.
All right. So to everyone, if you have questions, please submit them. We'll take them on. All right, moving on.
Okay. So there's no catch-all master data governance program that will serve all situations, but this is an example that I pulled together to have three types of policies, rules, and standards. One in the area of stewardship, another in the area of authorization, and third, auditing and documentation. And that can help address the big risks that I mentioned earlier: intellectual property protection, accuracy, privacy, compliance, and so on. So a stewardship policy, I think, really needs to assign stakeholders to oversee the data lifecycle. The policy can be implemented with rules that enforce inspection and curation practices, and then organizations can have the associated standards that provide the technical structure to support those rules. This includes defining formats, remediation methods for data quality issues, and technical standards. Authorization is another, I think, strong policy to consider. This is where you're authorizing data preparation, usage, consumption by models, applications, and individuals. And the rules would be to specify permissible users, applications, and data sets, and implement controls to support that. The standards can require the APIs and the access controls for enforcement. And so one of these standards here obviously could be Model Context Protocol, MCP, which simplifies access to a lot of source data for agents that need to consume data from within SaaS applications. Auditing and documentation is another major area for policy. You want to ensure you're complying with relevant regulations and laws by codifying your processes in terms of audits and periodic reports. And the standards can help make sure that you have a consistent frequency, scope, and format of your audit reports in particular. So lots going on here. I think that one other quick note I would mention about authorization is that Model Context Protocol opens up access to a lot of data within SaaS applications, but it'll be interesting to see how much those large SaaS vendors are willing to give access to their data. There's a recognition that data has a real value in the market, and Salesforce might not want to open up access and expose all that data for other AI-related vendors to consume. So we should expect a bit of a tug of war, and vendor proprietary controls might reduce some of the access that MCP provides.
Can you describe MCP just for folks who may not know it?
Sure. Model Context Protocol, MCP, is a protocol that came out from Anthropic, the GenAI vendor Anthropic, and has gotten support from its competitors such as OpenAI and others. A lot of practitioners and a lot of vendors across the AI community are embracing MCP as a way to open up access and standardize the way that agents consume data from various sources, especially SaaS applications. So it can really make it easier to have a RAG workflow, retrieval augmented generation. If, as a user, you enter a question into a language model that's built into your own company's application, it can pull up the associated information quickly using MCP. For example, maybe it'll go into some Slack messages to help answer a customer question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
All right. So, trusted data. I'm sure we're preaching to the choir with this audience, but it's really the starting point of everything. And I talked about data stewardship, authorization, auditing, and documentation policies as fundamental. Once you've mastered, or once you have some confidence that you've got the right controls in place there, you can extend your governance program to address model risks. And this is where you need to ensure You would need policies to ensure transparency and explainability, so you can explain the logic of AI outputs. It's important to have responsible output that, for example, is not toxic. Grok went off the rails a few weeks ago and started sending out lots of tweet messages through Elon's other platform, X, that were anti-Semitic and attacked a personal individual. That's the kind of thing that you really need to make sure you're not introducing that risk into your organization if you're adopting Grok or others. And then there's the need for continuous oversight so that you're always looking for the impact of model upgrades. If ChatGPT goes to version 5 and you have to upgrade, what's that going to do to output, tone, and so forth, and factual correctness? So those three policies to address model risks are critical. And then, of course, there's agents, safe decisions, accountable actions, and permissible behavior. I think it's obvious these are all risks to be addressed. I will note that OpenAI has put out an interesting white paper saying that based on their research, their reasoning models, if they detect they're being monitored closely by humans, will try to deceive the humans and hide what they're doing and maybe subvert the human intentions. OpenAI did not offer a fix for that problem. So there's stuff in the wild now that is really up to the practitioner to control. And it becomes really important to have those controls in place. There's no easy way to address all this stuff, but a lot of it starts with clean, trustworthy data. As you can see, when you go to models and agents, the uncertainty and the complexity of governance increases.
Have we seen an incident where these agents kind of ran amok? You kind of alluded to one just now, but I'm wondering if
Yeah.
they just start taking over a workflow and, doing very tangible things the wrong way, creating havoc for an organization. I don't think I've heard of anything yet, but I have to imagine that's going to happen at some point, especially when you have agents talking to other agents.
It's a good question. So Grok did some pretty powerful things, but it was really on the consumer side. So it was Grok
Yeah,
sending out tweets on X. ChatGPT version 5 had issues in terms of its outputs. It drew pretty creative maps of Europe when prompted
uh,
and things like that, but those were all consumer issues. I haven't heard of a model going rogue on a company's prospects or customers,
yeah,
but it very much is a risk. There are certainly cases of companies that didn't train their models sufficiently. So McDonald's was excited to roll out Gen AI for its drive-through customers, and it started confusing all the orders, and customers were getting lots of French fries but no chicken McNuggets and things like that. But it wasn't rogue behavior as much as amusing, inconvenient misinterpretation of words due to insufficient training.
So, Kevin, I'm a little bit naive about agentic architecture. For instance, when Carlos gave me his demo, he was just working with one agent. But yet, when I saw a demo from Domo with one of
Uh-huh.
their customers, that customer had built an application. It was a customer service application to retrieve information in response to customer questions. They had like 24 agents,
Yeah.
powering this application. So is it one agent or is it dozens of agents or is it just semantics and how we define what we're doing inside these development environments?
So that's a good question. We've actually talked a lot internally here at BARC about what an agent really is. Technically, an agent is autonomous, meaning it's making decisions and even taking actions without human oversight. The reality is most agents today still very much require human oversight, and that's not a bad thing. It can still improve efficiency, but it'll combine a few things. It'll take advantage of one or more models, usually a Gen AI model, often along with a machine learning model or something like that, and it'll encapsulate, it'll have a scheduler, it'll have some application logic, and it'll sort of put all those things together, and it'll send out calls to different tools to execute tasks and workflows to make decisions and take actions. based on a problem that a human has given it to solve. And there are companies like Domo, like Boomi, that are putting out a number of agents, which is pretty cool for their customers uh, to standardize workflows, whether it's data management, whether it's business processes and other things. And yeah, there are definitely a lot of agents. I think Boomi has a number of agents. Domo has a number of agents. Each of them specialized to perform different tasks. I have not seen many examples of agents working autonomously with agents. There can be interesting possibilities in the future where you have a team of agents out in a marketplace engaging with agents from other companies and transacting with one another. But the level of risk associated with that is really off the charts. One model draws from two or three sources. You might have two or three models that contribute to one agent. And then if you have agents interacting with each other across enterprise lines, you can just see how the risk could go up and up and up. So many points of failure. So it'll be a long time
Yeah.
before models and agents work independently with each other, in my view.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to is the agents running amok. I think that's the scenario that people aren't building that right now, but that is the scenario that it's most worrisome. Yeah, most of these agentic applications, like to me, it's like a new form of application development, right? You're
Yeah,
just building an application for a specific use case, and now you've got expanded capability to do so. That when I saw Carlos, do the application, he didn't write any code. I mean, he could see what code was generated, but he basically wrote a semantic layer in English, you know, that would guide the agent in determining, what actions it would take in response to a prompt. And he gave it sample queries, and he used MCP to connect to a CRM system and the Snowflake database. This was all written in Cortex, Snowflake Cortex. Um, so yeah, that to me just sounds like application development, just with some new ML capabilities built into it. So
yeah,
anyway,
it's powerful that you can do a lot of this stuff with the English natural language rather than
yeah,
coding.
yeah.
Um, but I think that a lot of vendors did a search and replace for Copilot and Gen AI Assistant and changed it to agent.
Okay, so we have a semantic issue about our semantics. Okay. All right. Moving on.
All right. These are four different ways that RAG workflows can find valuable data and inject it into the prompt for a language model. There are also just different search methods for all kinds of AI model training and inference. You can have vector databases that are doing semantic searches in order to interpret meaning. They're basically similarity searches of unstructured data. Knowledge graphs will help interpret complex relationships between entities or concepts in order to build ontologies. Relational databases, of course, in case we forgot, SQL is pretty good at pulling up facts and values that you can trust from relational databases. And then, of course, keyword matching is a pretty good complement to semantic search to make darn sure you have exactly what you're looking for in terms of a customer name or other things. And I put this table here in order to illustrate that all of this requires trustworthy data. If you don't have trustworthy data, then you can't enable any of this for AI training and inference.
Yeah. Data is running the world. Data runs the AI world. Yeah, you can't get very far without it. We've always known
That's
that,
true.
but the rest of the world, I think, is waking up to this fact.
All right. I've mentioned before, I view AI adoption as centered on three life cycles: data ops, model ops, and agent ops. And governed data holds the key to all of it, in my view. These life cycles involve preparing data or pipelines, then building them, and then orchestrating things in production. So that prepare, build, orchestrate life cycle applies to data sets as well as models and agents. And so the data lifecycle is to configure those pipelines you're ingesting, transforming, and cleansing diverse data types, not just tables, but also unstructured data. When you build it, you're going to use CI/CD and other data ops best practices. And then orchestration is obviously critical as well. So a lot of this builds, Wayne, on your foundational research in data ops, I think in 2019, a while ago, or 2018 even. And the point I would make is that a governed data lifecycle is critical to optimize everything that you do with models and agents because the models need to consume trusted data. The nature of trusted data, that data needs to remain fresh. You need to update your metadata, update your features, update your pipelines, and so forth. And that all feeds successful models, which in turn feeds successful agentic applications.
Great. All right, two more slides left, and then we can finish up. So if you have any more questions or comments in the audience, just use the Q&A tab below and let us know.
Okay, so I've talked a lot about risk, things that can go wrong. If we get it right, leading adopters can have pretty cool things happening. It'll take some time, so this is a 2030 vision. AI agents could be deciding, learning, and acting within governed guardrails. So you can have data platforms and SaaS applications that are feeding trusted inputs to models and tools that in turn support different agents within an organization. Maybe there's a finance agent, a sales ops agent, and a marketing agent, and each of them are doing different things with customer data. Humans are overseeing all of it. I think that will remain the case for a long time, but it does improve productivity of those humans. So these trustworthy agents can respond to human prompts, plan and execute sequences of tasks. They can delegate those tasks to tools and models. Ideally, agents can collaborate with each other. I think there will be human oversight needed, and they can even reflect on the suitability of their decisions, actions, and responses in order to improve over time. That's something that humans will also need to oversee. But once again, all of it depends on trusted data inputs, tables, documents, images, emails, everything else. Wayne, do you think we'll get here?
Yeah, I mean, I was really blown away by the demo that Carlos showed me, and it was a analytics demo, to provide information and insights to business executives, and
Huh?
it will enable them through, text-based word prompts to get insights immediately that would take an analyst maybe a week, and also recommend actions that they should take. So I think it's very powerful, especially in our space, the data and analytics space or insights to action space, right? We're going to see some very powerful applications.
We live in very interesting times.
Yeah, yeah. All right, last slide to sum it all up.
All right. So I'll close with three observations. I hope I made the point that data governance is still has risks. A lot of organizations have some work to do there. Introducing AI models and agents compounds those risks quite a bit, and it adds new ones. Data quality is the right place to start. Completeness, consistency, timeliness, and so forth are critical. And you need to extend your data governance policies from there. People, we asked organizations, what are the primary challenges for delivering data to AI? First challenge was data quality. Second challenge was people. And
Mm.
so there's the widespread concern about job loss. There's some early indications that entry-level workers are getting impacted in terms of their ability to get hired thanks to AI. But the reality is that most organizations need to hire AI savvy people and retrain their workforces to use this stuff effectively. And so I think workforce training, centers of excellence, upskilling are all critical. And also automated tools can help. So we find that organizations are very much interested in working with established vendors that they already trust to guide them through this because those vendors can automate, reduce their need to build custom workflows, and help them standardize on commercial solutions out of the box.
Now, I think one of the areas that this whole new AI revolution has failed is in the adoption of these so-called co-pilots, right? So a lot of organizations to get on the Gen AI bandwagon, they bought their co-pilots from their platform vendor, whether it's Microsoft or Google or whatever, and they deployed them broadly to their employee base. And, it was just kind of like a hope and pray kind of thing. It's like, this is a tool, should start using it. And I don't think that's succeeded very well, but I'd love to get your opinion on that. Because what I think has succeeded are these use case based custom applications built with, Gen AI as the core engine.
Great point. It's a mixed bag from what we've seen. We asked organizations, AI adopters that are using agents, what are your highest priority use cases for agents to manage data? The number one, which is interesting, was data quality. So now you have the fox in charge of the hen house, using an agent to ensure data quality. But you can envision, how pattern detection, anomaly detection, and so forth is really going to help ensure data quality. My understanding is that the Copilot within GitHub is pretty successful and pretty widely adopted to help with software development. Software development does seem to be an area that is pretty successful for agents and copilots. On the other hand, I personally find it amusing and a little intrusive how much Microsoft wants me to use their AI agent and copilot. When I cut and paste something now, it'll tell me this was due to Copilot. I think, well, I didn't really need a robot to cut and paste this text. So there are ways in which Microsoft is kind of forcing AI features, relabeled features, onto users in order to demonstrate ROI on their massive investment in AI.
Oh, I know. And Google's the same way with Gmail. It wants to write my emails and summarize them. And it's like, why? For me, anyway. I don't need that
Right.
help. So that kind of thing, I don't know if I'm just an anomaly or everyone else thinks these things are superfluous, but who knows?
Yeah, it does appear that there is a chunk of the population, I think it's probably younger, that's using this stuff to draft some of their emails. It's risky, but it can improve your productivity.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, if you need Gen AI to draft an email, one, you're probably trying to say too much in the email. You should probably pick up the phone, schedule a phone call to talk to someone, right? So the emails have to be, short, concise, and sweet. Um, and anything that's not is too much for that medium. So anyway, that's just a little pet peeve of mine.
Well, I won't name names. The founder of a software company in AI had an auto response to a colleague of mine that was clearly written by an agent because it was way off target. So there's a risk to these things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, great. Kevin, I want to thank you for your presentation today. It's very insightful. You stepped us
Thank
through
you.
the world of governance for data for AI in exacting detail. So I hope our audience, I trust our audience got a lot of value from it. And I would also like to thank our audience for tuning in. And we will send you the slides after the fact and a link to the recording. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody once again and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Wayne. Really enjoyed it.